In the 18th century, a process of economical change called the Industrial Revolution began. Its origin was in England. The Industrial Revolution was a transition to new manufacturing process. This transition includes going from handmade production methods to machines. This revolution changed and revolutionized the production capacity of Europe and United States. It was a revolution which transformed Europe's and American society, a revolution that served as a key to the origins of a modern Western society.
The steam machine was a technology that was introduced in the ends of 17th century. This is fueled by coal, and it produces energy by boiling water that moves distance. The first attempt to introduce this machine was in 1698, but it was a really rudimentary machine and it was dangerous to use it. Then, in 1712, Thomas Newcomen came with an improvement, but this machine was still dangerous and it wasted fuel and energy. Then, in 1775, James Watt came with another improvement from the Thomas Newcomen machine, and this one was one of the last models that was made. It was effective and useful. It wasn't dangerous. This machine had a condensator that prevented the waste of fuel and made it more productive. Steam machines were useful for many things, as in mills, transporting through trains, or for extracting coal. Also in industries such as the textile industry. Also, it was good because it had resources such as water that is somehow limited.
The railroad was one of the most important inventions of the Industrial Revolution. Mainly, it was created to have a transport of large capacity, cheap and fast to move large volumes of raw material. In the 19th century, the experiment with steam locomotives began. In the year 1814, George Stephenson built the first locomotive. The British Parliament in 1821 authorized the construction of a 13 kilometers road which connected Stockton and Darlington. This road started functioning in 1825. The first railways were only dedicated to the transportation of raw material, specifically of carbon and iron. In 1830, the first line of passengers transportation between Manchester and Liverpool was enacted.
That during the Industrial Revolution, a middle class first appeared. This middle class was under the high class, which was the ones that had the most power and money, but was above the working class. It is said that this middle class first appeared during the Industrial Revolution because some important factors became stronger, like work or money, that helped the classes be more distinguishable. The social class was composed by the nobility that was being successful on the industry and commerce, and also it was composed by the bourgeoisie that were landlords and that didn't have enough power to be high class. Also, something that emerged during the Industrial Revolution was the working class or working force. This class was the lowest of all. The working class is designated to the percentage of people that have to work inside the industries and that cannot afford a business or to be a part in commerce. The social class was the most distinguishable because during the industrial time, factories were starting to advance, so they needed people to produce. A very important event during the Industrial Revolution was that many people were moving from the countrysides to the cities, and this was because of various reasons. In the cities there were a lot of labor opportunities, and people in the countrysides, they just had to work in agriculture, so they decided to work in other things like in industry.
Industrial Revolution brought many short-term negative impacts. Some of these were the awful living and working conditions of the people. This is said as there was not any specific legal framework which covered the labor rights of people. For example, they were paid very low salaries for working lots of hours and in very harsh conditions. As well, the employers took advantage of this, and so they hired lots of people. Another negative impact was the child labor, which also was taking of advantage of the employers, and they hired lots of children because they were the cheapest labor of all. In terms of the urbanization, it brought many positive impacts to the society. This is said as the machinery was more fast and effective for producing produce. This brought many positive impacts to the country's wealth as well. It increased the production and it was more effective and fast, and this eventually increased the country's economy. The negative impact that this brought was that it created overcrowded and dirty cities. Well, regarding the health, in the years pre the Industrial Revolution, well, the life expectancy substantially decreased because of the high abundance of diseases in the cities caused by the pollution caused by factories, and that people live very close by, and the lack of sanitation caused by the inefficient sewer systems. Well, as well, there were no cures from the doctors, because, well, they used medicines from the Middle Ages that were not efficient enough to cure these diseases. At last, it can be said that the effects of the Industrial Revolution were at first short-term negative impacts, but they resulted on a positive change for the society. This is said taking into account the massive change of the industry, the factories, and all the production, and the acceleration of the production space created by all the revolutionary inventions of the time. As well, the reformation of the architecture, taking into account the buildings that were created in order to fit more people in more little spaces, and at last all the laws that had to do with the fairness for the people, as the ones that were implemented for the labor rights, such as the minimum wages, and the merging of the middle classes that eliminated aristocracy, making it a better and more fair world for everybody.